Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the service of Ina Joy Goldberg. We welcome those of you who are joining us online, and for those of you who are here, we do ask you take a moment to be sure your cell phones have been turned off, not to disturb the sacred funeral ceremony. Rabbi Alana Baden will be officiating this morning, and at this time we ask the family in the first row to please rise as the rabbi leads you in the ceremony of Kriya.
Good morning. It is such a sad honor to be with you as you prepare to say goodbye to Ina, your beloved mother and sister, aunt and friend to so many. We take a moment before we start our service, as David mentioned, to tear the Kriya ribbons, which are the outward expression of the grief that we feel inside. We put a tear into these ribbons to symbolize that there's something broken in us, that we're missing a piece as we mourn for Ina. But yet we don't separate the ribbon into two separate pieces, because we know that we'll always be connected to Ina, that she will always remain part of the fabric of our life as we carve out a space in our hearts and our souls to carry her legacy with us and to let her presence remain alive as we honor her memory through our lives. And so if you'll repeat these few brief words with me: Baruch Atah Adonai Dayan Ha'emet. Blessed are you, eternal our God, the faithful judge. And our deepest, deepest condolences. On behalf of the family, I want to thank everyone who has gathered here this morning for your presence both in the room and through the marvels of technology. It's times like these that community is so very, very important. When we feel alone, when we mark the loss of someone so important to our lives, it's so reassuring to know that we are not alone, that we're never alone, that we have the support of family and of friends and of each other. And on behalf of everyone gathered here in the room and digitally, we want to extend our heartfelt condolences to you, the primary mourners. Elise and Anne, as you mourn your dear mother, and Alan and Jan, as you remember your dear sister. Our hearts are with you and with your families at this time as well. And of course, as we mark the passing of Ina, we can't help but also remember with love the blessed memories of Ina's late daughter, Leslie, and her late husband, Jerome. May their memories abide among us as a benediction always. For death has taken our beloved Ina Joy Goldberg. We grieve in our darkened world. In our silence, there is lamentation. In our tears, there is loneliness. Lost in our sorrow, we pray that we can find the presence of loving friends. Hear us, O God, and be with us at this time. For Ina's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that was shared along life's path and which will continue through the tenderness of memory. For the many gifts of her heart and mind that brought so much joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach ba'atzat risha'im u'v'derech hata'im lo amad u'v'moshav leitzim lo yashav ki im b'torat Adonai chefzo u'v'torato yehegeh yomam v'layla. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. Excuse me. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. You return us to dust. You decree, return you mortals. For in your sight 1,000 years are as yesterday when it has passed, as a watch in the night. You engulf us in sleep. We are like grass that renews itself. At daybreak it flourishes anew. At dusk it withers and dries up. The span of our life is 80 years and 10, or given strength 80 years. But the best of those years have trouble and sorrow. They pass by speedily, and we are in darkness. Teach us, therefore, so to number our days, that we may attain a heart of wisdom. Turn to us, O God, show mercy to your servants. Satisfy us at daybreak with your steadfast love, that we may sing for joy all our days. Let your deeds be seen by your servants, your glory by their children. May your favor, O God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it may long endure. Adonai ro'i lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeni, al mei meruchot yanahaleni nafshi yeshovev. Yanchini v'ma'aglei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech begeit sal mavet lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sararai, dishanta v'Hashem en roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yurdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. I invite you to join me in the 23rd Psalm found on the inside of our pamphlets this morning. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the book of Ecclesiastes, we are taught that for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And so we have arrived at our time now to speak of Ina, to remember this vivacious, friendly, resilient woman who faced so many hardships in her life, but never allowed them to shade her eyes from what was beautiful and true and precious and enduring. You know, our sages teach that in ancient times there were 3 crowns that one could wear: the crown of the law, the crown of the priesthood, and the crown, of course, of royalty. But they said that the crown of a good name is greater than them all. And we know that today we are celebrating a very good name and a very good life. Ina Joy Goldberg. In fact, as I was reading those Psalms, whenever I came across the word joy, I couldn't help but let it hit me in a special way. We all know that Ina faced her challenges throughout her life, challenges that no one should have to face. She suffered devastating losses, deaths that seemed to come in clusters throughout her life, and a variety of health challenges. But nevertheless, she was always able to look at the bright side of life, to recognize the blessings, the gifts that graced her life, her time on earth. And so we invite two of the greatest blessings and gifts in Ina's life, her daughter and her brother, to share with us their thoughts and recollections at this time. And so first we invite Elise.
My mom was the quintessential everyone's mom. One friend said she will always be my mid-century modern mom with a chapter book of memories that no other person can possibly read and understand. Another friend wrote to tell me, in my eyes, she was the mom everyone wanted. Social, funny, interested, and interesting. Enviable qualities I'll always remember. When we were growing up, our friends would take refuge in our house when they were experiencing family issues. And there was Ina, always with welcoming arms, no judgment, and an open heart. Over the years, the nature of visits to the house on Karlov morphed into more of a social and party place, but what didn't change was Ina's welcoming arms and big heart. Everyone loved Ina, and Ina loved everyone back. I always used to joke that my friends liked my mom better than me, and that they only stayed friends with me so that they could have a little more time with Ina. I'm not sure that there isn't more than a grain of truth to that, but that's okay. There are obviously worse things. Anyone who knew Ina knew my mom loved to travel. In some respects, she lived to travel. She couldn't wait to get to that next event or city she'd never been to before and learn something new. She would travel for anything given a chance. She loved traveling for leisure as much as for all manner of events, be they bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, weddings, birthdays. Nothing made Ina happier than planning that next trip, and it was all the sweeter when she was traveling for a family occasion. Over the last couple of years, it seemed Ina had almost as many trips she took as trips she had to cancel due to health reasons. Fortunately, the Douro River cruise my mom and I had planned took place without a hitch a little over 2 years ago. By then, her body had already been excelling in the school of hard knocks with various health issues and the loss of sight in her left eye. But she had always wanted to go to Portugal and was really looking forward to it. I knew there was no way she could really do that trip without someone younger to help her, and it was the perfect opportunity to do a mother-daughter trip. There were several excursions she couldn't do, and she only did a limited number of activities each day. But she really had a great time. And boy, did she have that staff on the ship wrapped around her finger, as well as many of the guests. Because even in another country, everybody loved Ina. My mom went through a lot of loss over the years, but she still somehow managed to be the happiest pessimist around. She took joy in many things, including travel, as I just mentioned, friends. She had groups of friends from various parts of her life: the South Shore Girls, Laurel House, the Marshall Field Girls, the Book Club Girls, which I have to say, I'm pretty sure she never finished a book. But that wasn't why she was in book club. She loved getting together with all the various groups to hear the latest on each person and their family, what was new, where people were traveling, and what children and grandchildren were up to. Ina was a connector and would work to introduce people to others or keep people engaged with each other. As recently as the first week she was in hospice, she wanted her secretary to coordinate visits with her friends so that so-and-so's sister-in-law, who just moved into the Carrington, could meet some of her other friends who were then going to go visit her in her apartment. In addition to all of Ina's friends from the various parts of her life, she treated all of Leslie and my friends as her friends too, and all of our friends reciprocated. Every one of our friends knew Ina, and they all had their own specific connection to her. Tali, a friend of mine from college, spoke to Ina this Monday night. At this point, my mom was starting to become more and more out of it and more restless. But when Tali spoke to her about how much Ina meant to her, the great memories she had of Ina, and how Ina would always be her dancing partner, and then she started to sing "Stop in the Name of Love," Ina not only cracked a big grin, but she started to pantomime the stop gesture as she was lying down. And then she started to hum. The hum. The thing that used to drive me crazy about my mom, her incessant humming. Generally to no specific tune, and often when no music was playing. That hum had stopped many months ago. And hearing that hum again on Monday night was a brief moment of normalcy, and it was priceless. Family. Ina loved her family. And I don't just mean small nuclear family. That was my dad, my sister, me, Al, her brother. She loved all her family and anyone who married into the family and their family too, right? She kept in touch with everyone. She wanted to know what everyone was up to, what they're interested in, where they might be traveling, and so forth. She loved going to family events because not only was that a party and a festive occasion, which she loved, but it was also an opportunity to see lots of family in person, and it might even include some travel to boot. This past weekend, I asked my mom what she wanted her legacy to be, and she said, I can't see anymore. And she simply said, "You girls." How she said that made me understand that she wasn't just referring to me and Leslie, but she was referring to me, Leslie, and Anne. For over 30 years, for good or bad, Ina always treated Anne like another daughter and loved her unconditionally. Lastly, she loved pretty things and food. Ina could never pass up pretty shiny objects, such as silk scarves, bedazzled socks, jewelry, or crystal, especially if it was on sale. When she worked in the crystal department, I think it might have been easier if she had just endorsed her check over to Marshall Fields. And Ina's love for jewelry and gemstones was only surpassed by my sisters, and between the two of them, I now have a never-ending supply and could easily open up my own jewelry store. Ina's love of food is well known. Almost everything tasted great to her if she didn't have to cook it. She never wanted to see any food go to waste and was always interested in having leftovers. So whether you were dining with Ina at a restaurant or a home, she was the doggy bag queen. If dining with Ina, everyone knew that she'd be carrying home her leftovers, and oftentimes yours too. Given these two loves, it was especially cruel that the last several months of my mom's life, she could no longer see to enjoy all of her beautiful things and could no longer eat without becoming nauseous. Even though she couldn't really eat, old habits die hard. About 2 weeks ago, she had a meal of 1 cherry and a few nibbles of a Lorna Doone. Her comment to me was, "Take the cookie, I'm done, but don't throw it away. Make sure to save it for later." After my mom lost her sight in her first eye and started to have more and more falls, I used to joke to my friends that my mom was like one of those well-worn but beloved stuffed animals that had lost an eye. And with each new mishap and subsequent repair, the functionality was a bit more diminished, but that didn't matter to the owner of that stuffed animal. All they cared about was that they could still interact with their favorite toy. Each additional repair just highlighted how treasured the object was. That was my mom. Nobody cared that she couldn't function as well as she used to be able to. They just cared that she was around to still light up a room, add a quip, and talk about her next trip. My mom had a life well lived and was truly loved by many. And while her life was shorter than some, it was way longer than she ever expected it to be.
Elise, thank you so much for all those words and memories. And now, Alan, we welcome you to speak of your dear sister.
Thank you all for coming. I've been told that when I was a baby, Ina treated me like her favorite doll in a caring, kind, and loving manner. I later observed that she treated everyone like that. It was her nature. I've said she was the nicest person I ever met. In just a few minutes of conversation with anyone, she developed a real bond. The person with whom she was speaking could not help but recognize Ina took a true interest in her. She wasn't just superficial. She understood everything about the people she talked to, and they began to understand her better too. She listened, and she was incredibly non-judgmental, accepting, never criticizing. She didn't care what choices you made. She just listened and accepted them. She wasn't argumentative. Debate wasn't part of her lifestyle. She related to everyone. Her cousins, Davida, Phil, Sheldon, and Phyllis became brothers and sisters. She thought of her nephews as additional children, and they consider her the most generous person with her love and affection. She was never the scolder. All of us miss receiving her birthday cards on our anniversaries and her Valentine's Day cards at New Year's. Her surrogate grandmother status to Jan's and my grandchildren is best supported by her term for spending time with them. She called it a play date. She developed friendships with those who others would treat as acquaintances. Elise's and Leslie's friends and Jan's relatives became true friends. She vacationed with Jan's mother and never missed an opportunity to spend time with everyone, and they all enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed her welcoming quality. She immediately accepted Jan as a sister and always found another chair and place setting for anyone at her Passover table, even if it meant tearing apart the whole room and readjusting everything. She and I had a special relationship that one doesn't easily translate into words. We kind of knew what was going on with the other one, even if we weren't speaking. We understood each other in fewer words than one would expect. Unfortunately, her life was filled with incredible disappointments that could shatter most people, but not her. In addition to being the nicest person, she may have been the most resilient and intrepid person. Her qualities and attitudes taught me a lot. Don't let the bad stuff get in the way. Take a real interest in others. Accept people for who they are. Find additional adventures. They will make life worthwhile. I was lucky that she lived longer than she ever intended. I will miss her terribly.
Thank you so much for sharing all of these thoughts, for painting such a beautiful portrait of Ina. as I think of how you speak of Ina, I can't help but think in my mind of circles that keep expanding and expanding and expanding. And how lovely to know that those circles will continue to expand as we are drawn together in love, as we honor her memory, as those who were lucky enough to have her in your lives will always have her in your lives as she inspires you to live as she wished to live in her higher moments and as she did live. And those of us who weren't able to know her quite as well get to know her through your love and to share in the blessing that Ina was and will continue to be. And so let us take a moment now for silent remembrance, for each of us to reflect on Ina as we experienced her, for each of us to conjure up an image or an attribute that we wish to hold on to. And let's take a moment now and to truly make space in our hearts to carry Ina's memory with us so that she can continue to edify and to enhance our lives through her understanding of what it means to live a good life, to have a good name. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of the righteous be for an abiding blessing. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and are sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. And indeed, there is so much to remember, so much to hold on to, so much to carry with us, both in terms of the intangible as well as the tangible. We've heard references to Ina's incredible collection of socks and scarves, as she loved all things beautiful and colorful and joyful. The family has taken time to collect these items, and at the Shiva House, for those who will be visiting following the service, and on Saturday and Sunday, we'll have more details in a moment about the timing, the family encourages you to take a sock, to take a scarf, to have a piece of Ina to carry with you. And as I think about this, I can't help but think of a great line that the family shared with me when we met about how Ina loved to host Passover Seder, loved the full house, the family and the friends and the friends of the friends and the family of the friends and the friends of the family. And how she would tell her guests to be sure to eat slowly because it took her 3 days to cook the meal. And so as those who are going to the Shiva House visit, and as you take the socks and the scarves, savor them. It took her a lifetime to collect them, a lifetime to build up the comfort and the colors that the scarves and the socks represent, and the sparkles as well. What a beautiful tribute to Ina. Oh God, you give us loved ones and you make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you, the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. And so I invite us now to rise in body or in spirit as we prepare for the Eamalei Rachamim in loving memory of Ina. Eamalei Rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina. Im kedoshim utoharim kazohar harakia mazirim. Et nishmat Ina bat Yitzchak v'Sara, shahalacha la'olama. Ba'al harachamim yastireha b'seter knafav la'olamim. V'yitzor b'itzor ha'chaim et nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava. V'nomar. Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of Ina Joy Goldberg, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring her under the cover of thy wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may her repose be peace. And we say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at West Lawn Cemetery, located at 7801 West Montrose in Norridge. The family will be returning to the Goldberg-Johnson residence at 2215 West Estes Avenue in Chicago. They'll be together today until 6 p.m. following the interment, Saturday night beginning at 6:30 p.m., and Sunday from 3 to 8 p.m. Please note that masks are required at the residence if you are not fully vaccinated. Memorial contributions in her memory to Sarah Circle or housing opportunities for women would be appreciated. That information is on the service folder, and for those of you who are joining us online, all that information is on our website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. And for your own personal safety, I strongly recommend using a horn liberally as you're going through the intersections, and please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to a cemetery. At this time, I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort Ina Joy Goldberg from the chapel to the hearse, and then you may return to your cars.